You send a 2008 email
Sure.
to your
Right.
friends that they viewed as suggesting possible
Right.
suicide. How did they respond?
I said, this is how I scheduled my own intervention. I said that I've been evicted. I've only got gotta get out of the apartment. But before I get out of here, I want to ride a motorcycle through the living room and jump out onto the roof of the building next door. And, and I want to jump out of my bedroom window and land on the sidewalk, but I'd like to land in a hot tub. I'd settle for cardboard boxes. But Knoxville, get over here with the crew and bring me a hot tub or cardboard boxes. And if you don't, I'm gonna jump anyway, just to find out how many bones get broken when I land on concrete from 25 feet up in the air. I'm ready to die was how I ended that email. And now this email that I sent was to 200 of the most influential people who had the misfortune of me getting a hold of their contact info. And when I proposed that Knoxville come over and bring a hot tub or, the rest of it, he had already been in contact with Dr. Drew and, various people to organize, this intervention.
What happened when you actually got to the hospital?
I was spitting on people, as I recall. I wanted to smoke a cigarette, and I was screaming and yelling, and I tried to throw some chair or something. I was I'm throwing a temper tantrum and just being generally unlovely. And then they jammed a needle in my butt cheek, and then I took a nap. And I'm knocked out, and then when I wake up from my nap, I'm in the part of the hospital where the doors just don't open, and I'm I can't get, I'm locked up. It was a cross between a hospital and a jail. It was a pretty intense situation. And being in that situation, on the first day, I had this internal dialogue where I was kind of calculating how to handle, how am I gonna, I wanna get the out of here, But because my behavior had been so spectacular, they changed my status to what's called 5250, which is a 2-week hold. And I think it was maybe the 4th day. This guy, another patient, he said that he was a heroin addict. He gives me this book about alcoholism. But I don't want to read this book because, there's no helping me. There's no hope for me. But then, if it was that night, if it was the next night, I don't know. But I'm just laying in, and I can't sleep, and I'm bored, and there's nothing else better to do, and here's this book. And I just picked it up and started reading the book. And as I read it, particularly in the beginning, there was this sort of general assessment of alcoholism. That they were describing that the more hopeless you are, the better, which makes sense, as I look at it now. Because if part of you thinks no, there's hope for me, I can manage it, then you're not a candidate for recovery. Recovery starts with an admission of complete defeat. We admitted that we got our ass kicked and we surrendered. And so what I didn't even realize is that my core belief that I was past the point of help, that I was a lost cause, a write-off, actually made me a prime candidate. And so it's this paradox that, I'm just kind of fascinated with, but recovery begins by finding hope in hopelessness.
Well, why after 100 days sober have you said before that was the closest you'd ever been to actually killing yourself?
After I got sober, I would say that it took probably about that long, 3 months for the fog to clear enough for me to see the reality of what I had become, and I just judged myself as I hate myself. There was one time in particular where I was at one of our sober people things, and I spoke up and said, all of the work that I'm putting into, my recovery, I feel like what's coming out of this work is self-hatred. You know, as I look at like my inventory, as I go through this stuff that I have to go through, I don't like what I see. You know, I'm ashamed. I feel guilty. I feel like I hate myself, and I feel like I want to blow my brains out. And this thing that I was at was located on hospital grounds, and so when it was over, the people walked me across the hospital grounds and checked me into. I checked myself into the psychiatric unit.
Why did you end up staying in sober living for 2 years?
I remember a counselor saying some statistic that like 95% of all alcoholics died drunk of causes related directly to alcoholism, is like the general statistic. Like only about 5% of alcoholics achieve long-term sobriety. And I said to Dr. Drew, hey man, like I know the odds are not in my favor, and here I'm all in, and I don't want to waste my time, you know? And so however long you recommend that I stay in this rehab, I want to stay significantly longer so that I can give myself a better chance of not wasting my time doing this. Mm-hmm. And that is just a really crazy thing to do, because it's essentially handing over a blank check. Mm-hmm. And this place was like, I don't know how much that had cost me. I think it might have been like something in the like 300 grand, you know, ballpark.
Yeah.
But Dr. Drew, and bless his heart, he said, that's great that you're so committed, but the fact is I don't recommend that you stay in this rehab for more than 30 days. I think that would be pointless. But if you are serious about giving yourself an advantage, then what I recommend you doing is going from rehab into a sober living. And that makes all the sense in the world. And like today, I'm such a big fan of sober living. Saved my life, is what I think. Because without it, there would have been so many moments where it's just like in the book it describes, you know, like that moment of subtle insanity where just all of a sudden we just can't think of a reason not to take a drink.
Yeah.
That's what alcoholism is. And there's no way around it. You're going to have that moment. And that's why it's so important for sober people to stay together, because in a group, not all of us have that moment at the same time.
Yeah.
So we protect each other from that moment. And without being in that safe environment of the sober living on my own with that moment of subtle insanity, like I'd be a goner. And on top of that, with no discipline whatsoever, such entitlement issues, you know, like just such a child. And like I needed the safety and the structure and the discipline.